Washington is in gridlock right now, as we all know, with the shutdown of the government and the conflict about whether to raise the debt ceiling. And if we want to understand how we got to this gridlock, we really need to go back 5 years. And it was 5 years ago this fall, the fall of 2008, where we had the subprime mortgage crisis coming to a head. And the government stepped in with the TARP legislation and bailed out the banks, bailed out our biggest insurance company, ultimately bailed out 2 of our 3 big auto companies with that same legislation. You had the unprecedented involvement of the government into the economy at this time. At the same time, you subsequently had unprecedented government efforts to stimulate the economy, because even with the bailing out that was done, nonetheless the economy crashed. As we know, we had the most severe recession since the Great Depression, and the government stepped in with their fiscal and monetary policies in an unprecedented way. We had the $797 billion Obama stimulus plan in 2009. We had the Federal Reserve dropping interest rates to 0, but also an unprecedented policy of quantitative easing aimed at also lowering long-term interest rates. So all these events had the following impact. Conservative Republicans looked at this tremendous involvement by the government and the corresponding record budget deficit that came out, the $1.4 trillion annual budget deficit that came out of the government bailouts and stimulus and the decline in the economy. Conservative Republicans looked at all this government involvement and said, we've got to go the other direction. Of course, conservative Republicans want a small role of government in the economy, and now we have this unprecedented large role, and they came away very hardened and very determined to reduce the role of government in the economy. Liberal Democrats, on the other hand, looked at this and said, the reason we got into this problem, the reason we had the subprime mortgage crisis, is because we reduced the role of government too much. Financial deregulation, going back some years, including going back to the Clinton administration in the 90s, was the reason that we had the subprime mortgage crisis and had to bail out the banks. So the liberal Democrats look at this and say, we need, at this time, and as a reaction to the events of the subprime mortgage crisis and the associated recession, we need a stronger involvement of the government. We need to strengthen the government safety net, things like the Obamacare, the health care for all. And we need to take strong actions to reduce income inequality. Now, that's their response to the events. So the unprecedented events surrounding the subprime mortgage crisis and the biggest recession that we've had since the Great Depression have provided diametrically opposed policy prescriptions from conservative Republicans and liberal Democrats.